Okay, firstly, thank you to Cosmin, Kenny, and our friends at Parasite for inviting us here. I know that the task they asked me to do is having conversation with Harsono in front of you guys, which I think not a really good idea. First of all, because I've been having a lot of conversation with him, back home. So why should I do that again in front of you guys? That would be a bit boring. But instead of doing that kind of conversations, we already agree that we can do a different type of conversation. So my task now is like taking probably 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, hopefully, just to present you a backdrop of some kind of historical chronology kind of things that happens in Indonesia, let's say, since the 60s, late 60s or mid 60s up to mid 80s quickly. This is based on a project, a research project kind of thing that I've been working on for a couple of years with some friends, our friends at the Indonesian Visual Art Archive, by trying to assemble all these events, dates, names, and try to see what kind of connections, or sort of like complex connections, happens around. It depends on how you look at it or how you want to put this all this data in layers. We can then start to talk about, or to pinpoint, or to focus our attention in several different issues. So this particular one is, I lift off some of the layers above, and I got into this one layer where the issues of the second sessions that I'm in now about the relations of art and political, specific political context become sort of like quite visible in this kind of timeline kind of presentation. So I would like to start. I can go really back to the early 1920s, but we don't have that much time, I guess. So, but what I'm trying to say now, so let's zoom in to that. So just to make these issues a bit clear, Harsono is the generation, well, Harsono and his friends is the generations who grew up, who were growing up in the era of political conflicts in the 1965 or so. The end of Sukarno and the beginning of Suharto's new order, with a lot of demonstrations, conflicts going on in Indonesia. But at the same time, we can see above the line some sort of like artistic experimentations also happen quickly after the crisis of 1965, 1966. Even though I cannot really give you a direct connection whether the experiments by a theater director, W.S. Rendra, or Sardono Kusumo, a choreographer, has a direct connection with what happened with the direct connection with the beginning of the new art movement in 1975. But I would just throw out all these events just to show that I don't really believe that the deterministic kind of connection between art and politics based on Indonesian sort of like historical experience can be drawn in a very simplistic kind of way. It sort of like has many different layers and different involvement from different sides of the field. In this case, that's why I put Sardono experimentation of Javanese dance performance, some Gita Pancasona 1968 also included in this timeline, as well as Rendra experiment with theater, which then Gunawan Muhammad, the journalist and poet, dubbed as the mini world theater. As Suharto gained power, the first things that he did actually depoliticizing almost every sectors of citizens, civilians' life. I would say, like for instance, try to control universities, give the army a very special position because he comes from the army, and try to reduce the role of Navy, Air Force, and he tried to control and at the same time depoliticize a lot of other activities in civic life. Because of this, I think I have to go back just a little bit. I can show you just a little bit of how Indonesian art scenes in the before 1965 has a very sort of like densely infused with political affiliations. So after 1965, we can see quickly how the first artist collective formed by young artists after 1965 is Sanggar Dewata, Indonesia, mostly by Balinese artists who study and then lives in Jogja. So the affiliation, it's become very much clear from the fact that they only accept Balinese artists. So those who are originally from Bali, study at the art school in Jogja, can join this artist collective. They sort of like probably are very much aware the fact that they want to associate themselves with some kind of very primordial kind of associations about their collective rather than political. So this is a very common strategy under the Suharto's New Order, applied by most artists or even intellectual organization or students organizations actually. So that is sort of like the backdrop up to 1974, when a group of young artists, including Harsono, protested the result of the so-called Paintings Biennale of the National Paintings Biennale organized by Jakarta Art Council, which they consider as decadent, stagnant, didn't give any chance for a new kind of experimentations in Indonesian visual art. So because of this protest where they sent, I don't know whether you have the similar kind of sort of like habits or traditions. If you have somebody having a big party or celebration in Indonesia, you can send these huge flower arrangements where you can even have text or something written. So they send this kind of thing to the organizer with this sentence written on it. It says, congratulations for the death of Indonesian visual art, in English. It's actually in Bahasa Indonesia, but literally translated into English, like it would means like that. Because of that, some students, including Harsono and some other students, which were all, they are all from the institutes, the Art Institute of Jogja, were expelled out from the art school. That's why it's called Black December. So these students, young artists, then assemble themselves later on. They have some connections with the art students of Bandung who share similar kind of aspirations about opening up a way or try to establish a platform where their experimentation could take place. And I would say that is the start of the now known the group known as Gerakan Seni Rupa Baru Indonesia or Indonesian New Art Movement. I just show you this. That is the work by Harsono on the left, on the right side. On the left side is the only, I would say up to now, the only documentations we have in Bahasa Indonesia edited by former member of the Gerakan and now become one of the most famous Indonesian curator, Jim Sepangkat, published and distributed quite widely in Indonesia actually. And up to 1970, this series of experimental kind of activities happened throughout the 70s, I would say, followed by another famous one. It's called Kepribadian Apa in Jogja by some other artists. Some of them actually overlap. They are sort of like join the Indonesian New Art Movement group, but at the same time they have their other group in Jogja as well. At the same time, we can see below the yellow line how Suharto tried to depoliticize, especially the students. So 1978, Suharto government applied this new policy to regulate universities, state universities in Indonesia. It's called Campus Life Normalizations, Students Coordination Body. So it's completely changed the landscape of student activism in the 80s. But then the students sort of like pick up a different kind of strategy. Rather than organizing yourself into student organizations, you start having what's later on famously called among students at the time as discussion club. It seems to be like less political, but then you can sort of like exchange your idea, discuss some critical issues about society, about Indonesian politics within this kind of setting, which then relates to the fact that most of these students who are actively engaged with this discussion club later on involved in the flourishing, the emergence of non-government organizations, mostly in Jakarta, Bandung, who actively engage with the issues of environmental issues, poverty, labors, and other stuff. Which then, I would say, later on Harsono will tell you about his own artistic practice, which somehow reflect this twist and turn as well in his either formally or even thematically in his works. So I will quickly now move to the 80s. The New Art Movement actually continues until 1980s. The last project they did is this show called Pasaraya Dunia Fantasi, which I consider as the first attempt to deal with the issues of urban development in Indonesia. Before that, this kind of issues never been touched, or elaborate so much in visual art activities. I will quickly move into the end of 90s. With the economic crisis hitting Southeast Asia in starting mid-1997, we start to see we started to witness also the crumbling of the Suharto's New Order, and which then end up with the people movements, protests, which now called Reformasi. But various incidents also happen at the same time, which is, I would say, here, which seems to be having a great impact towards Harsono himself. I think Harsono's work, either installations, drawings, paintings, or video after 1998, very much deal because of the fact that he experienced some sort of like traumatic kind of experience because of the riots that happened in the 1998. Because of during the riots, there are a lot of Indonesian Chinese community and commercial area being attacked by most likely now a lot of people sort of like agree with this idea that the people behind it actually are small factions of the army who try to create riot and then took the opportunity to sort of like control everything and probably gain power to replace Suharto, but it didn't really work as planned, but still victims falls, you know. So I think up to today, a lot of Harsono's practice is very much about this, you know, questioning his own Indonesian Chinese identity and how Indonesian Chinese identity actually shaped, constructed with a lot of violence involved in it. I think that's sort of like as much backdrop I can give you, because otherwise he cannot do much of his showing his works to share his experience with you. So that's, and without further ado, please welcome Harsono.
Thank you very much. This is the last session of this seminar. I want to thanks to Cosmin, Jinyi, Ada, Jim, and all of the members of Parasite. Thank you very much that already invite me to talk in this seminar. I think Enin already give a background of what's happened in Indonesia. So I just only want to show my artistic practice. Yeah, mostly my recent work. I think Enin already talked about the situation, the political situation at that time. So the political trauma from the arrest of Lekra artists who had taken shelter under the Indonesian Communist Party. The government created a depoliticization of the art as an attempt of create political stability, need to gain economic development at the new era. At that time, a lot of artists don't want to make an artwork using the theme of political and social work, because they are very afraid to go to the jail. To talk about the social and political works, it's been related with the communism in Indonesia. Okay, I just want to show this is the situation of the first show at New Art Movement in Jakarta at 1975. So at this time, we just want to show the works that the people or the art critic cannot indicate this is painting, sculpture, or print. Because if the artists who make an artwork that they can indicate this is a painting, so they try to find the Western theory to criticize or to make a judgment about these works. So at that time, we're thinking about what kind of work that we can do. And then we can done. So we make like this one. At the time, we don't know about the name of installation anymore. So we just make an artwork that we call New Art Movement. And this is my work, who made in 1975. Also this one, this work now at Singapore Art Museum. And also this is the other artist's works. That's James Supangkat works, also in the Singapore Art Museum. And this is Siti Adiati's works. And this is also my works. Yeah, this is the same. And 1976, we tried to make a show called the concept show, or exhibition of the concept of New Art Movement. In that show, we show a lot of things about our thinking about art. And this is one of the drawing who made by Supriyanto during the concept show. But this image, and then reproducts to make a reproduction again during the show in Singapore Art Museum called Out Now. That's during the first of Singapore Biennale. Yeah, this is the New Art Movements. After that, so we, at 1987, we make a show called Pasaraya Dunia Fantasi. It's been a supermarket fantasy world. Before we make a show, we collected the exhibition project of Pasaraya Dunia Fantasi was held on 15 June 1987. It was preceded by research and data collecting, as well as inventory of the artwork that we sold on the street, that were sold on the street. It was an art exhibition whose installation was done cooperatively by taking up issues of Jakarta urban culture, which was considered representative of other main cities in Indonesia with their cultural complexities. The exhibition was colored by a strong experimental spirit with an ambition of leave behind elitism of art and emphasize a notion of plurality. This is also in the same exhibition. And 1985, yeah, that's before Pasaraya Dunia Fantasi, we are 5 of young artists from New Art Movement. We try to make an exhibition about the environmental problem in Jakarta. And before we make a show, so we work with one NGO to make a research about what the problem in Jakarta. And then I went with Dr. Maizar to go to the Jakarta Bay, and we found some children and women who poisoning by mercury because of they got the pollution from the seafood or something like that. Yeah, and then we make a project, Process 85 in Jakarta, and this is the first time also that we starting to connect it with the foreign or with the other country. This is we make a backdrop for PETA. PETA is a group theater from Filipina who using political activities. So the title of that this poster is "Cry for Asia." And also Sam Sarsihaan using his painting for demonstration in the. And this is the first time that I participate in a group show in Australia. It's called Artist Regional Exchange at 1992. And this is the other works that about the Indonesian political situation at 1994. before I make this work, I also make a research in Madura because there is three people who shot by military because they don't want to sell their land to the military. And then I make an interview and then I try to get a found object in there. Also this one, this is a sign language. If we read from here to there, so there's a DEMOKRASI, so democracy. This is I show in 1994. During this show, this is my first solo show. During this show, there is two intelligence come to my exhibition and they try to understand what it means. But fortunately, I'm not in that show. So, this intelligent cannot asking a lot about this show. And this is my performance during 1997. This performance in the public space, and this is a week before election. In Indonesia, during Suharto era, 2 weeks before election, no one can make any activities who can invite more than 5 people. If the activities invite more than 5 people, so that's all not allowed. So I show in a public space, and so many people come. But fortunately, there's no policeman saw this activity, so I'm safe. Yeah, this is the performance. Yeah, and this is the works that I made in 1998 after a riot, after the May riot. So there is a lot of people die in a supermarket. They rob the supermarket, but after they came inside the supermarket, so the plaza or the mall was burned, and a lot of people die in that case. And I make a performance, and then I also this is the video of my performance, and this is my installation. And also at 1998, I heard a lot of Chinese women was raped at the time, but I'm not clearly understand about that. So I involved in one NGO who try to help the women who got the rape, something like that. And then I realized that I know that at the time there is so many Chinese women was raped, and then I make this work. And after the 2009, so my art practicing during the Reformasi years presented social problems that are based on the idea that I covered through the complex research. The research was aimed at discovering the truth about the particular problem. My intention was to approach this truth from the cultural perspective. The Suharto regime collapsed in 1998, igniting a political reform in Indonesia. Suddenly, I was exposed to the loss of sense of self, as well as disconcerting experience in alienation among a society that was meant to be my own. This alienation caused by several political and social change brought about the certain behaviors among my peers that were previously unfamiliar to me, a power-hungry, a violent society who are willing to engage in acts of corruption and so forth. So after 2009, so I'm thinking about myself. Who am I? Questioning about who I am, and then I'm realized that I'm Indonesian Chinese, and then I'm thinking again that what's happened. I'm Indonesian, but I don't know a lot about Indonesian or Japanese culture. Also, I'm not understand about the Chinese culture. I cannot speak Mandarin. my name already changed. During 1967, the government make a rule that all of the Chinese people must change their name into Indonesian name. And then I changed my name into Indonesian name. After 2002, that's during Abdurrahman Wahid as a president. Abdurrahman Wahid make a lot of change. Very significant. That's all of the Chinese people can celebrate their Chinese New Year. All of the school can teaching the Chinese language. And then I realized that I have my Chinese name. And then I try to remember how to write my Chinese name. And then I make a performance, video performance that I try to write again my Chinese name. So this work called rewriting the erase. And also this one, rewriting the erase, that I make an installation, and this two side, that's a video of my performance. Since 1967, based on the President Cabinet decision of number like that, according to this letter of mandate, every Indonesian citizen of Chinese descent is advised, it means that read to force, to change their original name into the names that an authentic Indonesian person should have. Yeah. So I must change my name, and then affix is Franciscus Saverius, because my mother is a Catholic, and my mother was studying in a Dutch school. So I'm become a Catholic. And then I also make a performance about to write again my Chinese name. This is the video of my performance. Just only 6 minutes, so it's not very long. I can write my Chinese name because when I was child, I studied in a Chinese school for just only for 3 years. After that, so I moved to Catholic school because the government closed all of the Chinese school in Indonesia. I have, as a child, I often flicked through a black photo album at home, in which there was a picture about the exhumation of the Chinese people who had been murdered under in 1947 and 1948 in the village around Blitar. The photo album belongs to my father. He often told me the stories about the exhumation and murder of the Chinese people. This is the mass graveyard that I found in my hometown. And this is my father's photograph in the album. My father is a photographer. During 1947 until 1949, after the Japanese surrender, so the Dutch tried to colonize Indonesia again, and all of the Indonesian people tried to not to colonize again. Yeah, the Dutch returned to Indonesia at 1946 after the defeat of the Japanese who surrendered during World War II. The Dutch massive policies action moved inland to depth of Java and several cities in Sumatra. As the Dutch maneuvered toward reconquering Indonesia, they forced the Chinese to cooperate both as a military, police, and standby troop. And it was also often the case that they were stationed as Dutch in a number of regions. But after that, so a lot of Chinese people was killed during that time, because the Dutch say that the Chinese people will help us to back to Indonesia, but the Chinese people don't want to do that. So at 1947 and 49, a lot of Chinese who lives in a village surround the cities, because they just only lives maybe just only 2 or 3 Chinese family in there, and most of the Chinese people is wealthy in because they work, they have a business. So during 1947, 1949, a lot of Chinese people was robbed and killed, and also raped. So after at 1951, one of the Chinese organization in Jakarta, they gave an order to all of the Chinese people in other village, in other cities. They say that please find the Chinese dead bodies, and then buried them in a mass graveyard. And my father is a photographer, so he become a team of who take try to find the dead body. That's my father's. Yeah, the documentation of exhumation process of remain Chinese people who massacred in 1947, 1949. My father, as a photographer, he was a part of this team documenting this. My father's name is Ohok Chu, yeah, and my Chinese name is Ohong Bun. In a Chinese, I know that's Hu Feng Wen, and then I changed into Harsono. And in every photograph, my father always give a caption. This is the name of the place where the dead body is found, and this is the date. And usually they also shows the how many victims found in there. And after that, so I make try to make a research and to find the eyewitness who knows about the massacre. And I found some people, and then I make a video documentary about that. And also from that photograph, I make another works, the reproduction of my father's wedding. This is my mother, my father's, and this is the photograph of my father. And this is like I make a text. Yeah. And this is also my mother. She pregnant my daughter, my sister. Sorry, So, and this is my father, and this is me. It's during, maybe I'm at 3 years or something like that. Yeah, I retracted the history of genocide of the Chinese. I got a document with the title of memorandum. So after I show my work, so I've got a lot of information about what happened in Indonesia. So I've got a memorandum who made by Chonghua Chongwei. And from this memorandum, I tried to find another mass graveyard. And I found the other mass graveyard in Tulungagung. There is 87 dead bodies who's buried in this place. And also this is in Kediri, and this is in Nganjuk. This is so many people. This 789 people was buried in this mass graveyard. And this is in Mundilan. This is not very much, so just only 17. And after that, so I tried to make a artwork at the top of the mass grave stone. This project still on progress, because I still try to find another mass graveyard, and then I will make like this I call this is my performance. So I will make another video again about when I rubbing the pastels at the top of the textile and at the top of the mass gravestone. I think that's my presentation. Thank you very much.